I made a whole winter TBR. Let's see how I did. Hello lovely book dragons, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Joanna and I love to read fantasy. Today I'm going to look back on the first quarter of the month and see if I read the books that I set out to read, what I read, what I liked, what I didn't like. So buckle up because this could be a little bit of a longer video, but I love lists, I love going through them and hold myself accountable. So here we go. So last year, at the end of last year for Vlogmas, I was doing the winter Bookshop to read this winter, which was basically January, February, March, the first quarter of the year. And I will leave that video linked up here so you can go check it out. But pretty much these are the books that I set out to read. The Bear and the Nightingale, Malice, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Time of Contempt, Jade City, Burial Rites, Le Secret de l'Homme, and Nevermore. Out of those 8 books, I read 3 of them in the winter months. I read one other one, but it was already spring. I did start it in the winter months, so let's say that I read 4 of them. So 50% success. The ones I did read were The Bear and the Nightingale, Malice, Jade City, and Burial Rites. So I didn't do too well with this books I hope to read this winter, but I do have already a spring TBR up, so you can see it up here. Hopefully in the spring, when we're wrapping up spring, I can tell you that I did better. But let's talk about the books that I did read every single month, and then I'll tell you my top 5 favorites and maybe some that disappointed me a little bit. In January I managed to read 5 books, and they were Malice by John Gwynne, The Burning God by R.F. Kuang, The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, Burial Rites by Hannah Kent, and Valor by John Gwynne. In February, I managed to read 6 books. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, Hollow Smoke, Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, Legendborn by Tracy Dion, and A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And finally, in March, I also read 6 books, and they were Ruin by John Gwynne, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, Wrath by John Gwynne, Voice of War by Zach Argyle, The Deep by River Solomon, and Stones of Light by Zach Argyle. So the books that really stand out to me in this first quarter of the year are, of course, all the books in the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. I only had set out to read Malice this season. I had set out to read Malice this year. Of course, I had that hope to read his whole books by the end of the year, but I know myself. I'm really bad at binging series. Like as you can see from the Bear and the Nightingale, I'm good at starting series, but then I don't always follow up with continuing on and just binging them one after the other. With John Gwynne's books, I couldn't not do it. I absolutely loved Malice, and then I read Valor and I loved it even more. I read Ruin, I loved it even more, and then Wrath was phenomenal. The last 3 books, it's so hard for me to rank them because I loved Valor and Ruin and Wrath so much, but for completely different reasons. So those are the books that really stand out to me for this first quarter. My first quarter of this year will always be like, it will be the Faithful and the Fallen quarter of the year. It will be that part of the year where I discovered John Gwynne, my love for these characters, my love for this world, and I actually am super excited to dive into his other series and in his new series that he's publishing out this year. So I will definitely have read all of John Gwynne's books by the end of this year, and I'm really happy about that. I absolutely loved his books. Another book that I really loved was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This book, I actually have a video where I talk about it because it was part of a challenge that I did, which was the 100 pages per day challenge, so I will leave that linked up here. And in that one I also read Addie LaRue, which was also a book I really loved. I loved both of those books, but I want to talk more about The Midnight Library because I feel like Addie LaRue is very popular. The Midnight Library is it's very interesting because we follow a woman who commits suicide, and before she actually passes away, she arrives in this place called the Midnight Library, which is kind of like a purgatory between life and death, and she gets to experience different lives and see what would have happened if she had pursued this path, or if she had gone to a different college, for example, or if she had stayed with her boyfriend and never broken up with him. And I absolutely loved that. I loved seeing the deep thoughts of that person and like, what does that mean for us, of course, you know, like sometimes you think, what if I had done this? What if I'd gone and gotten that master's degree in the Netherlands like I thought I was gonna do? And all those things, and you wonder, and I really liked this book. It really touched me and it became a favorite, so I wanted to shout that one out. And the final books I want to shout out are the Threadlight series by Zach Argyle, because honestly these were my first self-published books that I read and they were great. I have a full review for books 1 and 2, which I read in the month of March, so I will leave that review up here as well. And honestly, I love these books. I gave the first one 4 stars and the second one 4.5 stars. They were so surprising. They were the reason I like them so much and why I want to shout them out is not only were they my first self-published books, which actually has sparked this interest in me for self-published authors and their books and their works, and have gotten me in contact with more self-published authors. I have a few self-published authors who contacted me and said, hey, would you like to review our books or my books on your channel? And I have accepted, and the reviews are coming. I just need to read the books now. But it has sparked my interest in this whole side of the industry that is, you publish your own things, and it makes me really want to read more self-published authors. And I actually have a series of self-published author videos coming out hopefully next month or something like that. I have been brainstorming the idea in my head, and I want to make it a whole week of self-published authors, so look forward to that. But not only that, but the reason I like these books so much is because they are incredibly short fantasy novels, and for me this was absolutely proof that yes, I absolutely love Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive, where one book is longer than Zach Argyle's whole series is probably going to end up being. But the Threadlight books proved, proved is the wrong word, but they showed me that you can have an incredible world, you can have incredible characters without having a huge book. You can do it, you can create a fun world, a very visually interesting world, a place that you actually is tangible, characters that are memorable, stories that keep you engaged, that you want to know what happens in less than 400 pages. And honestly, I don't read enough short fantasy books because of that. I always had that thought in my head, well, if it's a short fantasy book, it's not going to be explained everything's not going to be explained well. The characters won't have time to be developed. This will be an underdeveloped world, an underdeveloped plot, an underdeveloped history and lore. I like John Gwynne, I like Brandon Sanderson, I like A Song of Ice and Fire. I like long books, and Zach Argyle proved to me that I could have the exact same feeling for books that are much shorter, and that there are great fantasy books that are shorter, and I also am interested in reading some of those whenever I get to them that are on my shelf. And actually, I want to add one more book to the books that I want to talk about. There weren't any books that I hated this quarter. I did DNF Hall of Smoke because I wasn't engaged enough, which was probably the fault that I was reading the audiobook. I don't know. I'm not going to talk about The Final Empire because it's my fourth reread of that series. It did kickstart Cosmere Unbounded, which I will leave the announcement up here if I still have enough cards, or in the description. It did get kickstarted in the month of March. We started the whole read along, so that was really fun. But I want to talk about A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. Wow, you didn't see that one coming, did you? I am a huge Sarah J. Maas fan because she's the one that, besides the Laini Taylor books, she got me into fantasy. I feel like the Laini Taylor were my first high fantasy, whereas Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, they were high fantasy, but they were still like more contained, I would say. But yeah, Sarah J. Maas is who got me into fantasy, and I always owe her for that. I owe her that I have this channel today, that I love books so much, because she showed me that I could love fantasy, even though I always thought I would never be a fantasy reader. And yeah, I thought though that was something from the past, that I loved Akamath back in the day, that I loved all those things back in the day, and that I couldn't love a Sarah J. Maas book because it's fantasy romance. I didn't think I could do that today as much as I used to, and this book proved me completely wrong. I have a whole spoiler-filled vlog where I film my reading experience, which I will also leave linked somewhere. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved the characters. I loved everything. And no, the plot isn't incredible, and who cares, because you're there for her characters and for the romance. And I don't know, it kind of sparked my interest into reading more fantasy romance. So I guess that was also something that happened this quarter. So to quickly talk about the books I didn't read, I didn't get to Harry Potter because to me Harry Potter is more like a fall thing, so I'm gonna wait until the fall season and just probably pick them up then, because that's probably when I would be in the mood for it. Time of Contempt, I'm really scared because I don't hear so many good things about the later books in the Witcher series, with so many people saying that Time of Contempt is just so bad, and I'm really scared to read them, but I eventually want to, hopefully. If not, if I lose interest, then I may get rid of the whole series, but I really want to continue on. Le Secret de L'Homme was on so many a TBR, and I just wasn't feeling it. I just wasn't feeling a French YA. Maybe I'll read it at some point this year. I hope so, because I think it's at my top 10 to read of the year. So I hope to get to it, but I just wasn't feeling it. and Nevermore. Also, a bit like the Harry Potter thing, I think it's, for me, a September-October read, so I'm going to save it for the fall season. So there you go, guys. That's kind of it for today. That was my quarter in review of the books I had planned to read, the books I actually read, and the books that stood out to me this quarter. Let me know in the comments down below the books that stood out to you this quarter, that were your favorites, or that surprised you, or even that you didn't like so much. Let me know in the comments down below, and if you don't want to talk about all that, but you just want to let me know that you were here, you can leave a book emoji in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're doing very well and that you're reading some awesome books, and until next time, take care of yourselves. Bye guys.